welcome back to Lawyerist Lens. Today we're going to talk about websites, law firm websites, and I want to start by talking about the contest that we've been doing for a number of years now, where we try to find some of the best small firm websites. Now, something to know about the contest is we have always done it by taking nominations. So websites don't get into the contest unless someone nominates them. So one of the things to know is that in order to get into the contest, a website has to be nominated by somebody who isn't interested in it. So you can't, if it's your website or if it's your web designer, they can't nominate the website. You need to have one other person nominate it for you. And the reason that matters is that our contest is really about trying to figure out from those nominations which are the best. So every year we get a little bit of criticism because somebody has found another website that didn't get nominated that they think is the greatest. But we like that because if you can't find one other person to nominate the website, then maybe it's not that great. So that's why we use that. But that's important to know. And the metrics we use for judging and things are on the Best Law Firm Websites page, but we try to do some basic checking for search engine optimization, for copy, for things like that, for overall layout and design. It's not just a pretty pages contest. We're trying to really figure out, like, are these some of the more effective law firm websites? And in doing that contest for so many years, we've come up with a list of about 10 things that we think really make a law firm website more effective. And so I want to run through those with you today. Number one, start with a well-defined goal. Starting with a well-defined goal means understanding why you're trying to build this website in the first place, and then using that goal to guide the decisions you make about your website. So, for example, are you trying to build a website that will take those word of mouth referrals and help get them to call you once they Google you online? Or are you looking to take search engine traffic and maximize search engine traffic and get people who visit from a click to convert to call you or contact you and then schedule an appointment? So why are you building your website? You can have multiple reasons, but the clearer and more distinct and singular focus that you have, the easier it will be to build a website that meets your goals. Number two, highlight your call to action. A call to action is like a button usually, or a form that you want somebody to fill out. It's the thing that you want people to do on that page. Every page on your website should have a call to action, where you are helping that person take the action that they probably want to take when they've landed on that page. Now, you obviously get to decide what the call to action is, but the most effective call to actions are when you have tried to figure out, okay, if somebody lands on this page on my website, what is the thing they are most likely going to want to do? And then you make it really easy and obvious for them to be able to do that thing. So for example, on the front page of your website, maybe the thing they are most likely to want to do is contact you. And so you have a form or a phone number or whatever. For most law firm websites, that's the most obvious thing. But in some practice areas, there are better first steps that you could lead people through. And so consider what those things might be and make that the highlighted thing on the front page of your website. Call it out with a color, make it clear, remove distractions so that that thing is central, but let people do other things if they want to. Have a clear call to action, especially on the front page, but on every page on your website. Number three, focus on your value proposition to your clients. So what is it that you are offering or proposing to do for them? A lot of law firm websites focus on the lawyer. Where you went to law school, how long you've been practicing, what kind of practice area you do. But the question most clients have when they visit your website is, can this lawyer solve my problems, and is it a lawyer I want to work with? And so you need to explain that to them, hopefully in a concise way, near the very top of the very first page on your website, or on the page that you're trying to get links to or clicks to, whatever. Help people understand when they visited your website whether or not you can solve their problem for them, because that's probably their most pressing question when they show up. Unless you have a different goal or strategy in mind for your website. But usually make sure that that value proposition is front and center and baked into your entire website. So if your value proposition is that you are going to have compassionate, collaborative divorces, you probably don't want to have a website that is in angry red colors with block letters, right? So font choices and colors and things and image choices, they all flow from your value proposition as well. If people repeat it back to you, why did you choose me? Why did you click on my website, or why did you decide to contact me from my front page? Well, your website seemed soothing, and it seemed like you would bring the approach to my divorce that I wanted. Bingo, you've nailed it. I had an angry red website that was black and white and red and looked like a punk rock poster. And when people said why they hired me, it was because you looked like somebody who would stick it to the man. And I sued debt collectors. I was absolutely trying to do that. And so that was my value proposition that I wanted them to repeat back to me, and it worked. That's what your value proposition is. Number 4, and maybe this should be number 1, but you need to focus on responsive design. Responsive design means when somebody looks at your website on a phone, it looks just as good and is just as functional as it is when they look at it on their desktop computer. Because if you haven't noticed, most people have internet connected devices now, and the number 1 way that people look at anything on the internet is on a phone. Depending on the website, depending on the area of the market, the demographic, whatever, the number of people visiting your website may be as high as 2/3 of them coming from mobile. It's almost certainly at least 1/3 of visitors are going to be on mobile. It's a huge chunk, and you need to take care of them. Because when somebody loads your homepage, or they click on a link and land on your site, that's the first impression that you're making on them. And you want that to be a great first impression, no matter what device they're looking on. And you want them to be able to take the action that they want to take, no matter what they're browsing from. So consider responsive design, and whether you think about it as responsive first, or responsive always, or mobile first, whatever, it needs to look and function great no matter what device somebody is looking at it on. Number 5, avoid visual clutter. Cluttered, busy websites make it difficult for somebody to figure out where the things are that they want to do on the page. They make it hard for you to have a highlighted call to action as well, but it's very confusing, and people will leave if they can't figure out what they're trying to do. And so help them out by making your site simple, clear, by removing distractions and focusing on the thing that you want people to care about, which should also be the thing that you think they care about doing when they're on your site. Number 6 is use bold colors and striking images. You don't want to be beige. Like there's so many law firm websites that are maroon and beige, or very soothing blues and beiges. There's a lot of beige. And those websites are just boring. They don't make a statement. They don't say anything. There's no character to them. Have some character to your website. Don't be afraid to say, like, this is the kind of law firm we are. Because the right clients for your firm will see that and recognize it, and they will come for it, right? Yeah, you may lose some clients, and I think that's why so many lawyers and marketing materials are so beige, is because they're afraid of losing anyone. But instead of focusing on who you might turn off, focus on all of the people that you might turn on to your message, to your branding message. Use bold colors, use great images. And on the subject of images, make sure that when people walk into your office, they can recognize you from the image of you that they saw on your website. Don't use your 20-year-old profile photo that has all of the hair and none of it is gray. Use something that looks like who you are today so that they recognize you. Number 7, take advantage of typography. There's a world of options out there for fonts, which doesn't mean that you should just grab whatever you want, but make your website clear and legible with big text. The text really can't be, well, it can be too big, but it really can't be too big as long as it's reasonable. But make sure that your typography is nicely spaced, that there's good white space, that you've chosen fonts for readability or for impact, so that people who visit your website can read the stuff that is on your website. It's one of the ways that you can help people. Very few people look at a website and think, oh, I'm gonna hire this lawyer because of their great typography, obviously. But that doesn't mean it's not important. In the same way that it's important in your brief. The judge isn't going to say, oh, great typography, I'm gonna let this person win. Of course not. But they're more likely to read your brief and understand your message if you've made it easy for them. And the way to do that is through typography. You can also communicate with typography. Big blocky fonts are more aggressive than softer humanist fonts. Serif fonts like Century or don't ever use Times New Roman, but that's a serif font. Those are more persuasive and reassuring of your sort of professional reliability than, say, Arial or Helvetica, which are sans serif fonts that really don't say much of anything. You can persuade, you can convince, and you can draw people in with your typography, and you should. Number 8, design for accessibility. Accessibility means making sure that your website can be viewed and understood and consumed by people with disabilities of various kinds. And usually what that translates to is making sure that it can be parsed by a screen reader, but also making sure that the colors and the layout of things like buttons is big enough and contrasty enough that it's accessible to people with visual impairments as well, that might not be able to tell the difference between very lightly differentiated gradations and things like that. Now, accessibility is important because something like 20% of the population has some form of a disability. So you probably don't want to turn off a fifth of your potential clients or come across as just being insensitive to those people. We take accessibility into consideration in our contest as well. We have a minimum threshold below which you're just not going to make the final 10 if you aren't sufficiently accessible, and we use a tool to grade that. You can find that tool at webaim.org, and it will tell you what the problems are on your website. The other reason to focus on accessibility is that one of the disabled things that you need to understand your website is search engines like Google and Yahoo and Microsoft Bing. Those websites are computer models that are limited in what they can do and what they can understand. And so many of the same steps that you may take to make your website accessible to humans with disabilities are the same kinds of things that you would need to do to make your website accessible to search engines. And so it will often help you with your search engine optimization. There's also an argument to be made that your website is a public accommodation and would fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a legal question that I'm not even going to try to answer here, but there is a pretty persuasive argument that that may be true for you. In any case, accessibility is important for all those reasons, and you really need to make sure that your website is at least quite accessible so that everybody can use it. Number 9, obviously, optimize for search engines. I hope that we don't need to explain in great detail why this is important, but most people aren't going to go to your website and search for information. Many people aren't even going to remember your website's address. They're going to Google you, and that's how they will find you. Or they're going to Google the answer to a question that they have about their legal matter. Or they're going to Google a question that they have about a problem that they're facing that they don't know is a legal matter. And in all of those instances, your website needs to be search engine friendly. There are a few different ways to make sure that your website is search engine friendly, depending on the platform you're using, like say WordPress. There are plugins that you can use. But the bottom line is you need to learn just enough about search engine optimization to be able to do this either yourself or hire somebody to do it for you. Basic SEO can be pretty much a one-time thing that you get yourself set up with and then revisit periodically, maybe once a year or so. But if search engine optimization, if search queries are really how you intend to get your business, you should be prepared to pay a fair amount of money to make sure that your website is optimized and showing up high in search results. It takes work to do that, and it's expensive work if you're going to hire a professional. Finally, secure your website. When potential clients or clients visit your website, they are communicating with you. Their computers are sending information back and forth with your website. If they enter information to a form, they are directly communicating with you. It may be no more than their name and email address, but the fact that they've communicated with you is also a kind of communication, and you have an obligation to keep those secure. There are also, in the infrastructure of the web, in the way that search engines rank websites, security matters. Your website really must be secured with an SSL certificate. That's all the information you need to contact your hosting provider and make it happen, but your website needs to be secured with an SSL certificate, and the way that you can tell this is when it says HTTPS up in the browser bar. Now, implementing these is a little bit of voodoo and black magic, so you'll want help to do it. because implementing them poorly is worse than not implementing them at all. But you need this. We actually don't even allow websites without SSL certificates to rank in our contest anymore. It's just a no-brainer. It needs to be there. So let me mention some resources. You can get more information on everything I've mentioned today from our Best Website Design Survival Guide, which you can find on our website in our store. We also try to help lawyers with referrals to web designers and SEO consultants, and if that's something that you'd like, you can visit our website. We'll include the links to these things below this video. And you should also check out our Best Website contest, which usually wraps up every year in February, and so you should see the new results next February. Before you leave, please click the subscribe button, hit the bell if you want to be notified of new videos when we release them, and we'll see you next week.